And we are live here to chat about tonight's episode of Suits, which was episode 12 of season 6, entitled Bad Man. Ooh. And with me, I have Shana, as always. Shana, say hi.
Hi, season 7.
Season 7. Oh, did I say 6?
You totally said 6.
Listen, math is hard. I've only got 5 fingers on my hand, so if I have to count higher than that, like we're already pushing things. So I think we should start it off, rate it on a scale from 1 to 5. By the way, I'm going to try to make as little noise as possible, but I'm absolutely starving, so I'm eating vegan fish tacos. I know, like, drag me in the comments below, but let's start it off with a rating on a scale from 1 to 5. Having just seen the episode for me, whereas Shana saw it like weeks ago, because she's like special and gets press stuff, and yeah. What would you rate it? What's your reaction? 1 being like super low and 5 being super high.
3.2.
I'm sorry, what?
3.2.
3.2. Okay. And what did you rate it last week?
I think I was like a 4 or 5 last week, I think.
I think you did pick a 5 last week. So this has dropped a lot. So tell me what dropped it for you.
I mean, like, it's average.
Yeah.
Which is actually, I mean, that's still a gift given what the first part of the season was.
Yeah, yeah.
But I mean, it's average. Like, it gives you, it's very much a bridge to other things. And like, there were elements of it that were really good, but there was nothing like, I mean, look, 1980s Lewis is like really good. So that's why, I mean, it's average. It's a
Those
little
Lewis flashbacks.
Yeah, like it's a little bit above average, but I mean, it was a Suits episode. It wasn't like, I think, like, I really think the Sheila thing like takes a lot away for me because we already have the Paula thing taking a lot away, and then
so you don't ship Lewis and Sheila then?
No, I mean, when I was thinking about it today, like, I mean, she just like invited her hand into his mud, and there was definitely some stuff hinted at there while he was saying, "Hey, we shouldn't do this anymore."
It felt a little non-consensual.
Yeah, that really, and I think, I mean, I think to an extent it was supposed to be, because I mean, there's definitely a parallel with when he was younger and he's like, "No, I can't go out with you anymore because you're trash," or whatever he said. I don't know. That's not what he said, obviously. But then the girl kisses him. He's like, "Sure, I'll go on a date with you because you kissed me." Like, I mean, it's very...
He lets people mess with his head. So I guess I wouldn't say it's non-consensual. It's just a really shitty thing to do.
No, I think it is not. It was, because he was only going, no, like, no. And he definitely like made it clear that he felt gross about what they had done. But her hand was just in that mud anyway.
That sounds decidedly uncomfortable, but I'm not a guy, so
yeah. And well, the thing is, I think if it was the other way around, there would be some outrage.
Yeah.
Like if it was, yeah. And so and I think the particular climate we're in probably made me examine that with a little bit more of a microscope than I might normally. But it was even benchmark if it was any other year or any other time, like it would still kind of be like, he definitely like didn't want to do this. Like he doesn't want to be your fling, when you're taking advantage. And so I think that takes a lot away for me, even though it's proving
I'm wondering, do you feel like there's any parallels between the Lewis and Sheila thing and the Harvey and Paula thing? Or do you feel like those are two isolated things that are just like two examples of bad relationships, but not necessarily overlapping? In both cases, there's a therapist involved, except for the fact that Lewis's therapist is fantastic, in my opinion.
Yeah, so I think there's two things there. I think there's definitely two cases of a woman taking advantage of a man. And I think, and again, this is only a guess to me, and this is probably me just trying to justify things that I've been done with since they started. But like, Lewis always goes for what he can't have. Harvey's always like the best closer, blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, is that supposed to be saying something about,
Harvey never goes for what he can't have.
Right. He's doing the easy thing right now. And Donna bullshit lied about it, but said, "Oh, yeah, well, I didn't feel anything." So is he trying to still make this thing of his work, because
Well,
unlike
let's talk about
Lewis, he
Harvey
goes
and
for
Donna
what he
for a
can
second because
have.
they had a really interesting scene there by the window where Harvey changes his mind. And it really stood out to me. I mean, obviously, that was going to be one of the top scenes for me, anyways. Like, that's
Mhm.
going to be one of the things I care about because I know you, I think probably most people who would watch something like this are pretty invested in the Harvey and Donna storyline. But one of the things that was standing out to me about that scene was that in that scene, Harvey changes his mind.
Mhm.
And we don't usually see that from him. That's just really unusual. Even when Donna's trying to convince him of something, he doesn't often change his mind quite that fast. And in this case, she was not trying to convince him of something. You know, she was just, offering a drink, and he seems pretty decidedly no about it.
Mhm.
And she doesn't try to convince him otherwise. She doesn't seem too put off necessarily by it. She seems to understand his reasoning.
Mhm.
And then he changes his mind by the end of that. And it made me think about the episode as a whole, whether we had seen that or seen anything like that. And I remembered earlier in the episode, she comes in and is talking to him more about the business deal that they need with the money transfers. And once again, he changes his mind super quickly. And I'm wondering if that's playing off of what we saw last week, where he's supposed to be acknowledging more that he trusts her judgment, or if it's just that Harvey is starting to question his own judgment a little more readily and change his own mind a little more quickly, or was it just, pretty surface level that he just really wanted to have a drink with Donna a little more than he thought he did? What do you think on that? Am I overthinking it? What's your take?
No, I mean, I think there's a lot that we can unpack from those couple of minutes, because there's also the concept of, I mean, that's the window that,
Mm-hmm.
we thought, or I thought
The
stupidly,
window for romance for Harvey and Donna.
yeah, like they're looking out into the future together, they're holding hands, like after Jessica left, and then we know the rest was not history, unfortunately. But I mean, that's a place where they've been like super close, and she's comforted him before. And there was a physical distance there this time, and there was a little
Yeah.
bit. I mean, even when she first shows up in this episode, he's a little bit distracted with her. Like, there's a little bit of like an indication that, we're not quite there yet.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think yeah, I think him changing his mind too was, there was all this talk about blurry lines and boundaries and how they have basically none, and it led them to this garbage fire. So I don't know if that was his moment of trying to be noble, and then he was like, wait a minute, Donna totally gets, like, I mean, she reassured him about his shitty relationship because that's who Donna is.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she's done this before,
Yeah.
with every woman she tries to just let Harvey be happy. um so I think,
Just jumping in the chat really quick. TV Movie Spark says, "Hello, just want to slap Harvey. I hope Donna slaps him."
I mean, yeah, but I guess I have to be the sole Harvey apologist, because I do think that
Okay, well, be the Harvey
he's
apologist.
doing the right thing.
What's
He's
going on
not.
in Harvey's mind right now to
Yeah,
you?
he's in a cloudy. I think he's, he thought he was in this great relationship. Donna kind of shook things up, but then Donna said she didn't want anything, and then so, he's trying to open up and make this relationship work. Um, but like he tried to do the right thing and be like, hey, maybe I shouldn't drink with this other woman. Maybe I should be with my girlfriend. I think sometimes it's really hard, but we have to separate ourselves from like what we want from him and where he actually is. With that being said,
Where he is pretty heavily under Paula's thumb, I would say. And I really see, it gets kind of difficult for me to use terminology that I'm comfortable with talking about Paula because I sort of have this, I don't know, instinctual or knee jerk reaction to speaking negatively about female characters because even if I don't like a female character, I generally like her as a villain. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
I love female villains, and I love good female characters, and I love the layers in between. And even a character like Donna isn't perfect, and we've had issues with her before, or like you just said earlier, you feel like there's some lying going on, and I definitely agree with Donna.
Oh yeah, she's totally lying.
Which we wouldn't ever want, like a completely perfect character. But I think what's interesting for Paula, and the reason why it may seem, and we talked a little bit about this last week, it may seem like I'm almost overstating her as a bad guy, is simply because I think she represents the ethical conflict that used to be represented by things like Mike not going to Harvard but lying and saying he did.
Mm-hmm.
I think Paula comes in as this new ethical conflict. So when I'm sort of overstating her as a villain, or her Harvey being under her thumb or something like that, I'm saying that I think that there's sort of a grand ethical conflict involved in what's going on with her and Harvey, rather than just like a minor detail of Harvey's dating some woman that's not Donna because he's projecting Donna onto her, and it's frustrating. We're rooting for Harvey and Donna to get together. In a sense, there's a little bit of that, but there's also this pretty serious ethical conflict going on that to me matters a little bit more than Mike lying about going to Harvard. The ethical conflict that's going on with what Paula has done seems to impact more personal lives than Mike's lie did. Mike's lie just put him in a position of a lawyer without being qualified. He deserved to go to jail, but it wasn't like, oh my God, like he's destroying the world. Whereas with Paula, it feels a little more insidious, whatever that word is, because she's kind of seen Harvey at his most vulnerable, and yet is still using her position of power over him. But I also don't really want to defend Harvey, because like TV Movie Sparks in the chat said, he's a grown man, he should know better, and you kind of want him to be slapped too. Going back to the chat, if Donna slaps him, it will slap sense into him, and Paula is two-faced. Chat we have. Darby is driving me crazy. Stacey DeWitt says, Paula is therapizing Harva, using her knowledge of his past to manipulate him. I agree, Stacey.
That's the problem.
TV Movie Spark says, I like her in the beginning, but come on, she can't make Harvey and Donna quit. She can't make Harvey and Donna quit working together. I'm curious where that's going to go, this whole working together thing. And that's where I think they might start paralleling Mike and Rachel, because Mike and Rachel are trying to work quite closely together and wondering if they want the same things. Harvey and Donna are kind of being pulled apart. Where do you think that will go?
Where do I think that will go? I can't say.
I guess you know where it will go, but you can't tell us. But at the time that you had only watched this episode, what did you kind of foresee for them? Or I guess I should say, what would you like for their future plot line in this vein? What do you want to see?
Here's what I could say. The only thing I can say. This episode, Harvey does, I do think that he's making his terms clear. In terms of, he goes to her and he's like, yeah, I'm not coming here to apologize, but I want you to know I have a thing going on. But like, I mean, he did two things, and he insinuated that Paula was lying about not being threatened by Donna, because she is. She can quite frankly drop dead. And he made it on no uncertain terms, like, I like having Donna in my life. She was there for me. Now, I mean, then he backs it up with, I would rather have been with you. And I'm like, hey, Harvey, you can choke. Because
tell us how you really feel.
Well, I mean, so there, it's funny, like when I watched the original time, and I couldn't really talk to anybody about it, but I have a friend who also has access. I was sending her audio messages, and the Donna Jessica phone call happens. And there's like all this glee in my voice. And I'm like, this is what I deserve. This is the best ever. And then it changes scene. And I go, like, oh no, wait, that went south really quickly. Like, this is not, like, I mean, it was just like total, it was like, oh no, do not want, no. Because I mean, they did at least soften the blow for us by giving us like something, good. No, this episode, he is at least coming to realize that, you know, whatever capacity he goes with, whether he's, you know, whatever. I mean, I don't know what capacity he really wants out of Donna. Like, honestly, I don't know.
I think I know what Harvey wants out of Donna.
Well,
Let
okay,
me chew and swallow my food first.
I cannot confirm anything. Like I wouldn't if I could, but I can't anyway.
In the chat, TV Movie Spark says, I think next week will be the turning point for Darby and will lead to happy wedding dancing and happy eye gazing. And of course, she's referencing the preview photos that we've seen of the finale of Mike and Rachel's wedding. This isn't really a spoiler because it's kind of posted everywhere. It's a teaser. And we see that Harvey and Donna are best man and maid of honor. Appears to be quite a lovely wedding. If anything, it's more spoilers about Mike and Rachel's storyline. But I think we kind of knew where that was going. And at the wedding, we do see Sheila there with Lewis. So that might be a bit of a spoiler as well. What do you think of those? I know that's not really tonight's episode, but what did you think of those spoiler photos? Are you getting excited? You haven't seen that episode yet.
No, I was, you know, I really wanted the rest of the season anyway, because I really want to see where we go after next week. But I like really, really, really need it now. It's also like a 2-hour finale and I'm traveling that day probably.
Oh, goodness.
I really need it. But no, I mean, it's, I mean, they just look really happy and close, and you know, I want to know how. You know, I don't want to just
get to that point in the next 3 episodes.
Yeah, like I mean, even besides, you know, really, really liking the next episode, I don't want to just skip to that. I want to see what even happens to make that happen. But that like those photos are like the stuff fanfic is made of. Like, I mean, that you know, they're like on a date at their son's wedding. Like,
yeah.
I mean,
let's talk about Mike and Rachel a little bit, because they had they had what I would consider a more typical Suits case in this episode, because what Harvey, Donna, and the rest of the team were working on just had to do with essentially a difference in payment type to get some cash for Jessica.
Yeah.
Which is cool. And we got to see some phone calls with Jessica, which is fantastic. But Mike and Rachel carried what I would consider the Suits case of the week, and that had to do with him going up against his old buddy Oliver from the good guy lawyer troupe, and Mike and Rachel going at this case together. What did you think of that? What did you think of Mike having to deal with his "am I a hero, am I not a hero" aspect? Am I a good guy, am I not a good guy? What did you think of him and Rachel working together again, and Rachel's place in this? Did you like this case of the week?
I didn't care about the case. I just cared about the interactions and the way that it plays. But I feel like that's how they work. Yeah. I was proud of my boy. You know, this was 2 cases in a row where he more or less did the right thing based on what his job is.
Yeah.
You know, getting involved was a little bit of a issue, but I think he really thought that he could just negotiate something and be done with it. But once it was clear that it was not going to work out, he did what he had to do. And I was really, 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 I mean, I don't know. Was it ruining Jessica that finally taught Mike Ross about consequences? Like, you know,
Jessica from afar, still teaching them all lessons.
He really seems to have turned around these last couple episodes. I keep hoping. And it was really, I mean, the whole like, let's order Thai food and kick the Mike Ross wannabe's ass, and Rachel giving all the good of like Rachel was kind of the Donna, you know, like Mike was Harvey, Rachel was Donna, and Oliver was Mike. If you think about it, like Mike was definitely.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense, and considering they were dealing with an up and coming Mike, and they wanted to structure it that way, it would make sense that they were creating a bit of a Harvey and Donna situation. And I think they've been paralleling Mike and Rachel and Harvey and Donna for a while. The chat says, I love Mike and Rachel, going to miss them. Sometimes I don't care about the cases, just the character plot development. I'm team Mike all the way. And Mike wannabe, LOL. Love that line. Yeah, it sounds like everybody was pretty positive about the Mike and Rachel storyline.
Yeah. I mean, I think Rachel's all, yeah, it sounds like something my dad would say too, and look how I turned out or whatever. And I was like, you turned out great, sweetie. Except for that one season where you didn't.
Except for we pretend some of her writing.
Sometimes times when you cried like every episode, and it just didn't make sense. But that's where inconsistency comes in. I do wish that there was a little bit more. Like, I feel like episode 11, it was clearly about Harvey and Donna. This one was very heavily Lewis. I feel like with those two leaving so soon, like, it would be nice for them to not be like the C plot 2 weeks in a row. But at the same time, I feel like the 2-hour finale is going to be pretty heavily loaded. And I also
it is, and they're going to have to sort of build up all of the other characters going into the next season and going into the finale. So there's a plot for them as well, because if they're sending off Mike and Rachel, there might sort of be a limit as to how much storyline they want to invest in them. They're more just setting them up to go, and I think they're going to go start a firm together and get married and live happily ever after, most likely, I assume. The chat says, love the flashbacks, love flashback Lewis and Harvey. I appreciated that they chose to cast somebody other than Rick Kaufman for young Lewis, because there's a bit of stretching of the imagination we could do with some of these characters playing younger versions of themselves. And of course, they're fortunate in the, there's, when you have somebody like Sarah Rafferty playing Donna, you could have her play quite young and she's still going to pass as quite young. But when you're having somebody play a teenager, like teenage Lewis, I half expected them to try to like CG some sort of teen Lewis, because that's usually what they do for the flashbacks. They just sort of airbrush away the wrinkles, change the lighting, that sort of stuff. But they didn't. And I thought that the actor who played Teen Lewis did a fantastic job. So that was nice. And Teen Esther was lovely to see too. So that was really cute. I liked that just as much as the Harvey flashbacks, and I liked the Harvey flashbacks quite a lot. I was really impressed that they got me to care about this producer and that aspect of Harvey's background and his dad's music and his life out of nowhere. I mean, we didn't really know almost anything about that before, and it all gets revealed in this episode. And for me, I got invested pretty quickly in that. How did you respond to the Harvey flashbacks?
I feel like there was something that we knew about, like that came up once before, maybe quickly.
We've heard a little bit about Harvey's dad, and we've
seen
him in flashbacks.
I really, it was a good. It was interesting to the effect of, wow, it's really convenient that Vic owes him exactly what Jessica wants, but then we find out, of course, because Jessica knew all along. But I mean, seeing him kind of have that push and pull against his dad, who was clearly like, I really like little baby Harvey. The guy was clearly his idol. Versus
they did a good job with de-aging him and making him come across as quite young and a bit, desperate to please.
That was like 10 years ago versus Lewis was 32 years ago, which I don't want to talk about 86 being 32 years ago.
I wasn't born then, but.
Oh, shut up.
I hear a good time.
Shut up.
I'm old regardless, I promise.
I'm old. But no, I'm talking about
day over 18.
right. The little kid Harvey at the end, like that was really cool to see. But to see this push and pull of, he idolized his father versus he's got to look out for Jessica. He's got to do right by her. He's got to, and seeing kind of just how hard he kind of worked all these years kind of behind the scenes and was risking, like for 10 years, he's been risking being caught on keeping that off the books. And that was like his first. My favorite thing was he's like, "You want me to commit fraud?" And I'm like, "Sweetie, tell you what happens to you what happens to you like relatively soon, because 10 years ago we're in season 7, so 7, like it wasn't that far away that he committed fraud in a big way and brings everybody in on the game."
Yeah.
But it was really interesting to see like how much he put at risk to try to do right by his dad, just to have some people somewhere hear his music. Like, I mean, that's
what the title and that whole concept kind of reminded me of was the season 3 finale, I want to say. When did Suits do the college tour? Was that season 3 or season 4?
Oh God, it was one of the two.
I think it was season 3. Whichever. In that season finale, they had that moment where there was this sort of the usual question of ethics and question of heroism and all of that. My camera just went out of focus, but I look much better that way. Between, like, especially in that case, it had to do with Harvey. And then they have this moment at the end of the episode where he's sitting with Donna in his office and she sort of reassures him that he's a good man, and he tells her she's a good man for him. And the title and the phrasing, bad man, it kind of made me think of that and think of the ethical tie-ins to that. And in this case, it was a different kind of ethics. It was specifically relationship ethics that was referring to. Lewis's relationship ethics and Harvey's relationship ethics, which I still am not sure if the show and I are on the same page about ethical relationships, but I think we will find out. And perhaps we're on similar pages, and perhaps it will be entertaining regardless. So I'm excited.
I mean, that's my hope, is that they at least, whatever happens, that at some point it stops being so offensive with our relationships. I make
it's a little entertaining.
I make the point a lot lately that, I mean,
TV Movie Spark says it was season 3, the "I think you're a good man for me" line. So yeah, that was season 3. Wow, that's quite a while ago.
Scotty was, if again, like, just shipping Darby, like, you don't want Scotty there, but Scotty was good. She was a good foil. It was a good story. Mostly, it made sense. This thing, I will never. The beginning, there is no foundation. There will never be a foundation. It will pretty much never be right. And it's not because she's not Donna. It's because of all this other stuff. And she's not.
In the case of Harvey and Scotty, I think it was interesting in that I would consider Harvey to be the bad guy in that situation.
Absolutely.
Because he wasn't nice to Scotty or anybody involved, and they were constantly attacking and hurting each other, but Harvey was the worst with women anyways, so I guess, I'm siding against Harvey in that situation. Whereas in this situation, I find myself in the unusual and unpleasant situation where I have to defend a guy, and I don't like doing that. I would rather just say, like, oh, like, Harvey's the worst, and I hope he, like, comes to his senses. And to an extent, I do feel that way. But then it's also like, the guy was manipulated by his therapist that he went to when he was having panic attacks and on heavy medication, and a bunch of deep personal stuff about his life, which just conveniently came up later when she was trying to get him to commit to her, and she wants to separate him from his one constant source of comfort and sort of family, and this is a little weird. And she's done a bunch of ethical violations in the past with her practice, and for some reason I cannot side with the girl in this situation. I resent that, but the fact remains I can't side with her.
I mean, Suits has basically made me hate two women now because I'm really getting close to hating Sheila. Like
She's funny, so it's hard to hate her, but
right,
I
but
don't
she's not.
ethically agree with her in any way. And I think tonight kind of pushed me to that place where, with the non-consensual kind of sexual stuff, kind of pushed me to that place where I was like, your funniness can't really make up for this at this point.
And she also like, I mean, where does she get off? Like, she's going to tell Lewis
In the
he
closet
broke
and
her
sometimes in my
heart.
room.
No, she's going to tell Lewis that he broke her heart when, like, I mean, we've seen Lewis running around like a sad little puppy dog all this time, and he's like doing it
Well,
for
he
the
broke her heart because like he wanted kids and she didn't want kids, and now they're in this whole thing. I don't know. I dislike her as well, but she's
mutual. Like,
I don't I guess I'm just not invested enough in the Lewis leg of this story to care as much, because there was a time when I was pretty heavily invested in Lewis's character development, and unfortunately I just kept finding them resetting his character development. It
mhm.
would progress him quite a lot and then regress him for the sake of the plot line or to create a foil for Harvey. And there were moments where he had some really relevant and important questions about why Harvey got away with certain things, why he didn't get away with certain things, and
Right.
the sort of social acceptability of their two characters being different, even though what they were doing the same. And there was just some interesting things they could play with, and they would keep resetting his character and not letting him progress. And now that they are again, I'm kind of just left caring a little less, because I'm kind of left waiting for the other shoe to drop and waiting for him to regress again and do something, not just one particular thing, but just regress as a whole back to being a foil. And hopefully they don't, but the level that I could invest in him has dropped,
I
unfortunately.
think the thing that's always been consistent about Lewis, though, I think, 7A aside, because 7A is such a mess, and I think even there too, he's the guy that clearly his whole life has been the nerd, the unloved, desperate
Yeah.
for friendship, desperate for love, desperate for any breadcrumb you'll give him. And then he takes it and he runs with it and he does stupid shit and you want to kill him. But I think the one thing that has always been there that's been easily relatable, unfortunately, is this idea of not really feeling like you connect to anybody. And when you finally do, something just terrible always happens.
Mhm.
So I think for that, to see this guy that he's been just beaten up on, and he's got Donna. He thinks Harvey's like his BFF when, let's be real, Harvey has not really ever been a friend to him.
I think that's why I kind of want to see Lewis have a friend again, but the closest thing he got to a friend was his partnership with Rachel, which I found extremely compelling. And unfortunately will be over in just a couple more episodes.
And that's the thing. Like, I mean, and he had this one great love in Sheila and it fell apart. And now we know that he had this other great love that's part of why, great love, it's a high school thing, but whatever, which is part of why he's
Love.
so stuck on the unattainable. I mean, it's another layer of it. So, like, to see her taking advantage of him, knowing kind of what his foundation is, and knowing that on top of that, he also had his, like, first love, we'll say, do what she did to him. Like, it's hurtful. And I think part of it too is that Rick Kaufman is just so good at playing a little sad. When Lewis is sad, like you feel it because he's like really good at it. When the full cast is good, it can be a terrible story, and you're like,
all at once, but they toned Lewis down in season 7. That's true. I would say he peaked at the Norma death.
yes,
That was wild and so fantastically done. They did something after that with his storyline with Donna or something like that I felt was just kind of this odd character regression, which is understandable after his secretary died, but I don't know. I felt like there was some downs and ups, and you know what it was? It was his relationship with the character that I already forgot her name, but she like got pregnant with somebody else because they were in an open relationship. She was played by Carly Pope. She was simultaneously on Arrow playing Susan Williams.
I vaguely remember. No, my big thing with Lewis, and I thought it was this season too, that did put me off for a while, but they just sucked me back in, was when
it was really weird.
Off on Craig from Degrassi, and that other girl, he went off on her. Like the associates early. I think it was early this season. I thought that it was.
It might have been in 7-8, but something about that was just very like, ooh, what are they doing here? Not loving this. They're making him seem really like, I don't know, it's just different than how they progressed him before. I'm so sorry. I'm keeping you and everybody watching a little bit later than planned, but let's end on the what we would like to see going forward, which I know is a little different than you because you've seen a little bit into the future more than the rest of us. But what in general terms, I guess, would you like to see going forward for, pick one or two of these characters?
Oh my God. I want Paula to die.
Okay. Your feelings are valid. We understand. Pick another character.
I'm trying
in the chat. TV Movie Spark says Donna happy. That's another good one.
Yes, Donna deserves like everything in the world, and if
endless happiness.
If her everything in the world happens to be fucked up Harvey, then I want her to have him. And if she can do better, if they can give her better,
Harvey, I'm so sorry for her, but it does.
No, I mean, if they actually gave us a quality candidate, I'd probably jump on it. But I'd really like to see Mike continue on this trajectory of actually being the good guy, actually learning how to do good. It's not right that he got out of prison so quickly. It's not right that he then turned around and got to be a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
Although, I mean, again, it was a weird ethical dilemma because he wasn't really hurting anybody and he's a genius. But we discussed that ad nauseum. So I'd like to see him, he is where he is for better or worse. I'd really like to see him. I want my little boy that was taking tests for money and selling weed and stumbled into that office to, as bad as it is, because he did a lot of horrible shit and he ruined a lot of lives and, he didn't really get the consequences. I do want to see him go out with a happy ending. TV doesn't get a lot of happy endings. He's,
I feel like he's going to get a happy ending.
He's our family. He's, I want him to parent trap mom and dad.
Yes, please. Make himself useful at his wedding.
Yeah, and go out with a bang. I really want to see Lewis recognize that he has self-worth beyond
somebody grabbing him in the mud.
Beyond being grabbed in the mud. I want him to, somebody needs to let him know that he is not a loser. I mean, he's a Harvard-educated lawyer. He's one of the most successful, if tumultuous firms,
See, I thought his friendship with Rachel really was that. And unfortunately, she's leaving. So I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that his partnership with Katrina next season, because Amanda Schull, who plays Katrina, is going to be a regular next season. We presume continuing to work with Lewis. And I think that will be so cool for him. Also, you and I talked last week about the Katrina Lewis thing, and I think somebody in the chat had mentioned that they kind of low-key almost shipped Katrina and Lewis. And you and I mentioned that because of the age difference, that might not be somewhere where the show is going. First of all, I should just go ahead and correct myself because the age difference between Harvey and Paula far exceeds that. So there's already that. There's already that. But then also somebody in the meantime, in the past week, commented on the video saying that even though we don't know the age difference of the characters, we do know that the age difference of the actors is actually under 10 years. So I would say going into season 8, Lewis and Katrina may be fair game for shipping for those who may not be partial to Miss Sheila and her non-consensual mud hand jobs. I think Katrina may be an option. We'll see.
I will say though, like as much as I hate Sheila right now, I love Rachel Harris.
Isn't she lovely?
She's great on Lucifer as Dr. Linda. I'm very pissed off at Lucifer right now. I haven't watched 2 episodes because I'm pissed off. But anyone who hasn't seen it before now, totally watch the first all except the last two or 3 episodes. She's wonderful there. So if Lewis and Sheila are endgame, I still need him to recognize his worth, and I still need her to realize that she's really not been good to him. But I mean, I definitely don't want to see the last of Rachel Harris because she's great.
Yeah, I mean,
that's the hard thing with this show. Like,
maybe Lewis can have a love triangle with Katrina, Sheila, something like that. I don't know. Who knows? Well, I've kept everybody far too overtime. I obviously agree with everything that you've said going forward, so I won't go through my lists or anything like that. But if anybody has any questions,
if anybody actually like, yeah,
do what now?
You can actually talk about the future. I kind of can't.
Yeah. I mean, what I would like to see is sort of everything I went through in my pros and cons for this episode. I just want to see more of the good and less of the parts that I would consider a little bit slower. But I'm hoping that the progression that we get is not regressed, unless it's the occasional case where people do naturally regress. But I think the show has overused, and I mean very overused, the plot point of somebody having character progression and character regression. That I would be perfectly happy if they just did not use that anymore again. It gets to the point where if it's used too often, it feels like a cheap way to get out of consequences rather than an interesting point about somebody's character development. So I would like to see them continue with the decisions or paths that they've laid out for these characters and not continually just revisit and regress to the past points, because we like what they've done so far and we'd like to see it actually move forward with the romantic storylines, the character arcs, everything like that. So thank you, Shana, for joining me. If you want to chat more with Shana or read any of her stuff, her Twitter is @ShayZorz, the O being a 0, and that is linked in the description below. If you want to chat with me, I'm @Cammie and Ray. Amazingly enough, Shana, my lipstick held up through those 2 fish tacos.
It's pretty fabulous, actually.
It's in case anybody is wondering, this is not a beauty YouTube channel, but it is the Sephora cream lip stain in 01. I don't know what the color name is because this is not a beauty YouTube channel, but I do know that the Sephora brand stuff and the Fenty brand stuff is made in the same lab, and a lot of the Fenty stuff, if you find it in the Sephora collection, is formula-wise almost identical. It's just the Fenty stuff costs more because it's Rihanna, which is fair. We love Rihanna. There's your little factoid of the day. All right. Thank you guys for watching. I will talk to you next week. TV Movie Spark says good night. Nice chatting with you girls. Might see you next week. Might need it. I think you might. Shana, you think we might need this chat next week?
Next week is gonna go over. It's gonna be a long one. I promise.
Oh, go overtime here. I will carve out an entire hour for next week to chat.
I will spoil this much, which is not a spoiler at all, and I've been doing it the past couple of days. It's really good. Okay. Sarah is probably, I mean, she's always a highlight, but she's like a highlight, like a highlight.
Some Emmy-worthy scenes.
And you are whatever you use to cope: chocolate, alcohol,
vodka,
salty.
It's usually vodka for me, but it was food this week.
Yeah, like whatever. Get it, have it handy, have a little bit of everything, because but it's weird pacing though. You're gonna think that it's Yeah, I mean, I spent a lot of time going, okay, this is kind of whoa, oh, and then once it gets to whoa, oh, buckle up.
I'm
They said,
buckled up in advance.
buckle up,
I'm ready.
get buckled. That's that.
And that's that. You
That's
heard
that.
it.
There's nothing else. There's nothing specific. Don't ask. Don't give me your theories. Please don't give me your theories because I can't even like the tweet.
Give me your theories. I will like your theories. Tweet your theories at me.
But
all right. We'll let you go. We won't pester you with questions. But thank you everybody watching, and we will see you next week for what Shana says will be quite a long after chat. I'll talk to you next week.